I started actually as discovering art from a very young age because my mother was always taking us to see shows like the opera, the ballet, many different things. And then my sister was playing the violin, and so of course I wanted to do what my big sister did and began taking violin lessons as well as the piano. And then I went to an arts high school as a violinist, and I played the violin I think for about 12 years, maybe, no, 8. And it was a time in my life where you're young, you're an adolescent. I was very shy, very quiet, introverted, and I remember just going through a hard time, like, who am I, why am I here, all these complex things. Laying on my bed one day just like, please give me something that I can call my own, where I can feel like I can express myself. And then the next day, literally, I had this thing where I was like, I have to dance flamenco. Out of nowhere it came. So I grabbed the yellow pages, went like this, found a teacher, and went to take a class downtown San Francisco, was where I started. And I remember the first class that I ever took, as I was paying for the class, I had a flash that I was going to be doing this for the rest of my life. I saw myself like doing an interview and saying, I need to go to Spain. So right off the bat, I knew from that moment, before even taking the class, like, this is my life. So I actually began studying in San Francisco, where I was born and raised, and ended up saving money, enough money to have so that I could move to Spain. And I ended up going with a one-way ticket. Didn't know what I was doing, didn't speak any Spanish, nothing, and I just went, and I've been there for 18 years. I would come back periodically to work and to, make more money and then go back, because when I first went to Spain, it was in 2001, right after the Twin Towers had fallen down. Back then, it was still the peseta. So the dollar went a very long way. So I was able to stay there a full year without having to worry about working and stuff like that. But then I would periodically come back because I would get gigs here in the States and go back and forth. And little by little began, working and traveling and, studying and all that. When I got to Spain, I actually arrived in Madrid first, and it was a shock. It was like, okay, this is big city. It's very much similar to the United States. It wasn't what I had pictured in my mind, because I had read up a lot about Andalusia and where the flamenco came from, and Sevilla. And so when I got to Madrid, I was like, no, this is not what I pictured, because I had a picture of like a patio with flowers, and so I was like, this is too much. So I was in Madrid for I think less than a week, and I was like, I want to go to Sevilla. It was like something, my intuition kept guiding me. So I was with a friend, and we hopped on the train and got to Sevilla, and I was like, it felt right. And she at the time had contact with Juan Polvillo, and so we ended up connecting with him. I took a few classes with him, and I had written to people that I had known, that were living in Spain, and asked around about teachers, and I went and started studying with different people. And I remember at first it was very overwhelming because I didn't speak any Spanish. So here I am pulling my hair out, I don't understand anything. People would talk to me and I'd be like, just kind of yes to everything. And now you see so many foreigners in the classes, but back then there were always foreigners, but there wasn't really many English-speaking people. So I was kind of lost at first, and just the city and everything is very different from what I was used to. I was at the time 18, 19 years old, and first time living outside of my home in a foreign country. So it was a lot of culture shock, and I think people seem so angry here, because they scream or yell with a very or speak with a higher tone in the voice. So for me, it was kind of like, what? Why are they so mad all the time? But yeah, it was a challenge in the beginning. But then little by little, like, I was very focused on it and knew, that the only way to get better was to continue studying and really immerse myself in the culture and practicing and stuff. So I would actually practice on my own for like 4 hours a day on top of taking classes. And I tried not to take so many classes in the beginning so that I could really focus on one style, one person, and get the information and then work on it on my own to integrate it. So some of the challenges that I faced were, obviously I'm not Spanish. And so things that I would hear in the beginning were like, yeah, baila bien por no ser de aquí. Baila bien por ser extranjera. She's not a bad dancer for being a foreigner. Things like this. So it was always kind of like you were branded as something different. And I had it very clear in my mind from the very beginning that, when I got into this, I was trying to find myself, not lose myself, or try to become something or somebody that I was not. So a lot of people would say to me, you should color your hair, you should, get, rayos uvas, go in the tanning bed, get a little tanner, change your last name, because if you change your last name, so-and-so could represent you, you could get more work, and da-da-da. And I was like, no, this is who I am. I'm not Spanish. I never will be Spanish. My upbringing is different. This is what I have to work with. How can I find me and be a good artist with what I have? So this was a big challenge because it also took me onto a whole nother road of self-discovery and not trying to force myself to be something I wasn't, but to use what I have to be who I am. And I think that it's a harder road because a lot of times, even maybe for people that are from there, it's like people want to fit you into a mold that they're used to. And stepping outside of the box can be a bit difficult for people to understand in the beginning, but I think in the long run for yourself as an artist, it's more gratifying. So, and I recognized that I had a whole nother vocabulary that was my own, that, I go to the studio and I start playing around and letting my body go places that it wants to go without trying to force myself to be in some sort of structure that looks flamenco. So it's allowed me to become more free within myself, no? My need to dance is for my need to express myself. So usually inspiration comes from things that I'm feeling or living in the moment that I need to get out and release. So I think, well, I'm going through this struggle right now or this happy moment. How can I express that through the dance? And it just kind of happens. But also, art, painting, because I feel like painting is like movement on a canvas. Colors, nature, human experiences, because these are things that we can all relate to, So I try to go more that realm. Music in general inspires me. Everything, like life itself is very inspirational, but I feel like it usually comes from something that's more internal within myself that I feel I need to release. For the creative process, it's always very different, no? Like I said, life kind of throws things out at me and my intuition's like, okay, this is what I need to express now. So sometimes an image can be the inspiration for something, and on that image I begin to investigate music that I think would inspire me for that piece. Or sometimes people will contact me and be like, I want you to choreograph something to this specific music. So then I begin hearing the music over and over again and just kind of letting my body tell me what I need to do or where it needs to go. When you're kind of on a completely clear blank slate, okay, here's my canvas, how am I going to paint this picture? it can be a bit more difficult because you're coming out of nowhere. There's nothing to grab onto, so you have to imagine music, or sometimes you want to create in silence, so you think of breath or movement as the music in itself, so it depends. But like I said, it's usually an internal process first, and I try not to create just solely on, oh, this movement looks pretty. No, but it gotta come from an emotion somehow, for me anyways. When it's time to get down to business, sometimes it starts off by just getting silly. And a lot of times when I am not so much focused on the mind and structuring things and just letting myself do what it wants to do, or doing something crazy, stupid, playing. And I'm like, whoa, that's actually really cool, because your mind's not involved trying to control everything. So for me, it's a great experience to let the mind go and let the body express. So yeah, sometimes it takes 5 minutes and you have what you need and it's enough, or sometimes you need, all day. But I try not to force myself, okay, you have to be here, because then again, it's control. And I think when anything you want to control so much is cutting off the freedom of expressing freely, no? So a typical day in my world would be to, have my routines in the morning, but I love making my breakfast, drinking my coffee, mi café con leche. Then normally I usually go to the gym, and because it helps me, I think, to have resistance. It actually gives me a lot of strength when I'm on the stage. And then I'll go rehearse, have lunch, and then maybe go back to the studio again to rehearse, and then go to the tablao, or if I'm teaching that day, teach. But a typical day is this. So I have, my routine of, and it's a lot of discipline. There are days where you wake up, you're like, oh, I don't want to do this, I'm tired, my body, you've been performing till late, you get home around 12, and I usually get up around 7:30, 8 o'clock, and that's where it all begins. So your body is constantly moving, no? But yeah, I try to be very disciplined about, my practice, my time for me in the studio, the gym, and all that stuff. Goes in the beginning, it was very much of an obsession. Like, I couldn't not rehearse for a day. I'd feel guilty, and I had to be in the studio like all day long practicing and making everything perfect. But now I've become more relaxed with that, because I do feel like I have to live my life, because it also adds to your experience, no? You have to have something to tell as well. And if it's just a studio, I don't know how healthy that is and how productive that is for your, vital lifestyle. And plus, when you're traveling, sometimes you don't have access to a studio, or circumstances don't allow you to practice so much. So there are other ways you can practice, by listening to music or running through things in your head. But for me, I've become more relaxed in that sense, where I don't want it to be an obsession or an addiction where I'm a slave to my dancing. No, because then it takes the fun out of it. So everything, con calma. I think we go, depends on what, moment I'm at in my life. But I think right now I love to dance solea, and I really enjoy dancing seguirilla. And these are, I think, the two palos that and taranto as well. Yeah, I like them all, but it depends on the moment, the mood that I'm in every day. But I think those two would probably be my favorite. No? I love watching everyone dance. I think I get a lot out of everyone, even students. A lot of times when I watch students, I'm like, oh, that movement. You can always learn something from someone. But for me, I love people that are authentic, that are coming from a place that's, real. Where if you feel it, then I feel it. if it's more about aesthetics or exterior things, it's nice sometimes, but it's not moving. And what I love to watch is something that, you know, really gets into my bones or my skin, or it takes your breath away, you know? So somebody that's authentic in their expression. I like performing in both settings. A tablao really has helped me to open my ears more, to not stick so much on a fixed structure, to improvise more, to be more awake in the moment. Because when you walk into a tablao, sometimes you don't know who you're gonna work with, you don't know what you're gonna dance, you don't know what's gonna happen. So you're really more, keeps you on your toes, you're more awake to what's happening in the moment. I love also the fact that it's more of an intimate setting. You can feel really tightly the audience members, or even your compañeros, no, the musicians and your other artists that are on stage with you. What I love about a theater is it's like creating a whole nother world. You're able to play with space, with lighting, with different ways of moving, you know, because when you go into a tablao, you can, no, but people kind of want to see more of what traditional flamenco is, maybe. So you're not gonna throw yourself on the floor, maybe, but in a theater, you can get a little bit more crazy in that aspect where you're able to step outside the box, no, be more free in that way. And also, for me, a lot of the times I'm not aware of the audience, so it almost feels like I'm having a dance with myself or a conversation with myself in that moment. So you're not distracted, you can't see any faces normally, so it really forces you to go more in. It becomes more a bit of like a meditation, which a tablao can do as well. I'm never really focused so much on, you know, my audience, or in that way. It's a different way of giving and receiving, I think, for me anyways. My rituals before I perform, because I get really nervous always, but I like that feeling because it reminds me that I still have a lot of respect for what I do. But I tend to spray a lot of perfume. I don't know why, and because I think part of it too, I remember going to see shows and I could smell the artist, so it becomes also a sensory thing. Another smelling is part of the whole thing for me, no? So I get nervous and I begin to spray myself with a lot of perfume, and then I usually have this thing where I, you know, say thank you and I kiss the ground, the stage, you know, before I go on, just like kind of blessing the space. So those are my things that I do.
Do you do it in the tablao and the big stage, or just the big stage?
Normally just the big stage. I do the perfume thing like practically always, and the musicians are like, stop spraying the perfume, you're stinking up the dressing room. But yeah. Like, not too many people know this, but before I got into flamenco, I actually wanted to become a fashion designer and move to Milan. So I really love costumes, like fashion in general. So I always try to find costumes that will reflect what it is I'm trying to express through the choreography, the dance, or the piece, but I tend to be more simple in my choices. Just also because I feel more comfortable on stage with, you know, costumes that have less busyness going on. I feel like the more simple it is, the more the eye is attracted to the dance instead of just the costumes. Plus, sometimes with these big skirts, I feel like there's so much fabric getting in the way of my legs, so I'm not so comfortable moving. And it also tends to affect the way I move. So for me, I personally like things that are more simple, so that, you know, the costuming isn't the main focus, but more the art itself, although it is a part of it, no? But I tend to be more simple. Personally, I started dancing with flamenco. I did not take other sorts of dance. I later on thought maybe ballet could be something that could be helpful, but personally I feel like the because ballet is the base of all dance, but actually for flamenco is so grounded and ballet is more uplifting. I think for people that have started dancing with ballet, it really forms your body a lot. So it can be a little, depending on the person and how well you're able to go break these habits, but it can really mold your body to have your feet turned out, and this can be counterproductive in my view. No, I think anything can be helpful if you're able to use it, knowing that when you're dancing flamenco, you're dancing flamenco. When you're doing ballet, you're doing ballet. When you're doing modern, you're doing modern. Whatever it may be, it depends on your own personal choice. I later have taken maybe 1 or 2 contemporary dance classes in my life, but it's not something that I've actually pursued. So is it productive? It depends on everybody. I do think that people that have started with ballet have their bodies shaped more for ballet, and flamenco is completely different. You use different muscles, you're more grounded. I would think maybe modern dance is a bit more similar just because of the way that the relationship to the floor, the earth is, So it's very personal. I mean, I don't like to give advice because I think it's all relative. Who am I to say anything? But I recommend listening to a lot of cante, a lot of music, a lot of guitar, a lot of the music, because I think it's good to take classes and to learn the steps and technique and all that stuff, but I think it's very important also to be very aficionado in flamenco, because there's opening your ears to the music is going to help you so much more to understand how to use those steps that you're learning in classes, where to place them, why they are that way. So understanding the music is a big part of the communication that happens within the dancing. It's not just about learning a choreography and performing and putting on a nice dress and all that stuff. It goes way beyond that. So I recommend listening to a lot of the music and going and seeing performances and practicing all that you learn in the classes on your own. So it's not about, if the more classes I take, the better dancer I will be. You really have to get into the studio by yourself and understand how your own body works, because your body is different from the person next to you or from your teacher.